Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Dutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. Check out these monitors right here behind me. These are feeds coming into the CBS News Broadcast Center from all of our stations and affiliates around the country. If it's happening out there, we're going to bring it to you live right here in Studio 55. Let's begin. Charged with murder. What we're learning about the 26-year-old suspect arrested in the shooting death of the United Healthcare CEO. Plus, Malibu under an evacuation order. A fast-moving wildfire is tearing through Southern California and expanding in size. The latest on the effort to contain the blaze. And renewed hope in Syria. Collapse of Assad's regime could lead to more information about U.S. citizen Austin Tice. We're going to hear from his family on their efforts to bring him home after he disappeared there more than a decade ago. This is CBS News 24/7. Out of Malibu, California, showing the Franklin fire, which has scorched more than 1,800 acres. 6,000 people are under evacuation orders. Officials were forced to shut down a stretch of the iconic Pacific Coast Highway. The city is still largely without power as crews work to contain the flames, and that's become even more challenging with a high wind warning in place until later this afternoon. CBS News correspondent Jonathan Vigliotti is on the ground and joins me live from Malibu to discuss this. So Jonathan, what's the latest?
Yeah, Vlad, the wind, as you can tell, has calmed down. So has the fire activity. Still, as you mentioned, more than 1,800 acres have been scorched. You have hundreds of fire crews that are working the scene around this area. They're trying to tamp down those flames before the wind picks up a little bit later this afternoon. To give you a little bit of a scene setter, we're really here in the heart of Malibu. We're just a short walk away from the main shopping area. When we first arrived earlier this morning, this whole area was surrounded by flames. Where I'm standing right now, we watched as 30-foot flames were pushed through. You're looking at what is the aftermath, what appears to be an industrial site. You could see these two vans here totally destroyed. To put some perspective just how intense this fire burned. At this hour, it is 0% contained. It jumped the Pacific Coast Highway a few hours ago. That is a 4-lane highway. It's currently threatening homes there along the coast. Crews working there. Meanwhile, the fire threat, the red flag warnings, extreme wind gusts exceeding possibly 80 miles per hour remains in effect through tomorrow evening. You can imagine it doesn't take a lot of wind to hit a hot spot and turn those small flames into a towering inferno, Vlad.
So, Jonathan, this fire was reported incredibly late last night, so a lot of those evacuation orders went well after people had already gone to bed. So what are people going through over these last 12 hours?
Yeah, and I was monitoring this. At 11 o'clock, the Franklin fire started in a canyon. 10 acres burned. In 20 minutes, it jumped to 100 acres within a few hours, 900 acres, and then 30 minutes after that, it doubled in size. A lot of people, as you mentioned, considering how late it was, woken up by those emergency alerts on their phones. As we were driving in around 1 o'clock in the morning, a lot of people fleeing. And I spoke with one woman. She works on a ranch here. There are a few ranches here in Malibu. She had to flee as she was trying to get her horses into her trailer. She had to leave them behind. You can imagine how emotional she was, waiting to be able to return to see what is left. In terms of the university here, Pepperdine, important to point out because it was threatened for a period of time. The power was cut off. Students were told to shelter in place. The good news here, fire crews surrounded that area. They seem to have a control on the fire there. With that said, though, classes have been canceled today. You can imagine, though, a lot of people still on edge as the wind does pick up a little bit later on today. That fire behavior going to continue to increase. Again, 0% contained, more than 1,800 acres, and you've got hundreds of crews scrambling to control this thing, Cloud.
All right, Jonathan Vigliotti on the ground for us, as always, covering these wildfires. Jonathan, we appreciate you. Stay safe. All right, CBS News Los Angeles is on the ground right now. Let's dip into their coverage.
Miles per hour from Santa Clarita, Simi Valley, Moore Park, Camarillo. We'll zoom down to the actual fire location now. These are sustained winds. Malibu Hills, 30 miles per hour. Malibu Beach, 21 miles per hour. But the wind gusts in this region are 40 miles per hour. And after a temporary rise in relative humidity, it's back down to 5 to 10%. That is a problem. So we have strong winds, we have low relative humidity, and the intensity of the Santa Ana wind event is the same one that brought the fire to Camarillo last month. So the peak of the winds will be from 7 o'clock until 11 o'clock this morning. So the strongest winds from the Santa Ana wind event are right now and for the next 4 hours, from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock. The winds will still be strong. They'll still be gusty this afternoon, this evening before they relax overnight tonight. But even tomorrow, as the winds relax, the relative humidity will still be incredibly low, down around 5 to 10%, which just makes stuff super, super dry. So the fire danger stays high even after the worst of the winds are gone. So the red flag warning is in effect all the way until Wednesday. I'm going to step out of the way on this one. This is the wind profile for Camarillo specifically. And it's 53 miles per hour right now. We'll stay above 30 miles per hour all the way through 5 o'clock this afternoon. So it's going to be windy all day long. But the worst of the winds, the biggest numbers, are from now until 11 o'clock, relaxing down to 10 to 20 miles per hour after 8 o'clock tonight. Fire weather outlook. It's color-coded. All of us have higher fire danger. Hasn't rained that much. It's windy, the soil's dry, and it's 5 to 10% relative humidity. But where is the worst fire danger? It is from Calabasas north to Santa Clarita, back west into Santa Paula and Simi Valley, and then back south into the Conejo Valley, including Thousand Oaks. We have a big fire burning right now in Malibu. That does not mean that the fire danger is any less anywhere else. This may be the first fire that we see today. Let's hope it's the only one, but the fire conditions haven't changed. It is still critical or extreme in many parts of Southern California, including this area right here. Why is this area the center of it? Because this is where the worst winds are. This is where we're seeing those winds of 30 to 70 miles per hour. Now, the red flag warning includes you in the Inland Empire. You have a critical fire danger as well. It's all of Orange County except for the beach. It's all of LA County except for the immediate metro area. And we also have that high wind warning because this morning we're looking at wind gusts as high as 50 to 70 miles per hour in western LA County, including Malibu, and then north into eastern Ventura County. So it is going to be windy.
All right, we're going to continue to monitor CBS Los Angeles as they continue covering those fires in Malibu, and we'll bring you updates as warranted. Meanwhile, the man suspected of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson is now officially charged with murder. 26-year-old Luigi Mangione comes from a wealthy Maryland family and has attended elite schools and universities. Police say he was carrying an apparent ghost gun and a suppressor when they arrested him at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania. CBS News correspondent Lilia Luciano is in Altoona, Pennsylvania, where the suspect was arrested yesterday. All right, Lilia, so a couple of questions. What kind of charges is Mangione facing right now, and when should we expect him back in New York City?
Well, Vlad, the first set of charges that came yesterday after he was arrested here in Altoona, so in the state of Pennsylvania, have to do with the illegal weapons, so the ghost gun that was found in his possession. So we're talking about an illegal weapons charge, firearms charge. There's also a forgery of documents charge and of misrepresenting himself to authorities. When police went to arrest the suspect, he said that he was somebody else. He showed a fake ID. That fake ID, NYPD says, matches the fake ID that they say was used to book that hostel and to check into that hostel in the days leading up to the shooting. There are several other charges there. Obviously, the most important charge in this case are the ones in New York. They came down last night, and the main charge is murder, which is what we expected would happen. Here's what's on the docket as of now. The preliminary hearing for the case here in Pennsylvania is set for December 23rd. But what I'm hearing is that there's an expectation that there will be a hearing to have him extradited. He has two options. He's either going to waive his extradition, and at which point NYPD would come and take him to New York to face that murder charge, that murder case, or he fights that. He contests the extradition, and what that would mean is an additional series of days while there is another petition for the extradition that we are hearing from authorities that could take anywhere between 30 and 45 days.
And what else did they find in that backpack, Lilia?
Well, Vlad, it's alarming. When police showed up, what police tell me here in Altoona is, of course, 2 officers showed up. They were just following this tip that came from that McDonald's. They weren't not entirely expecting to find the person that is part of this, or was part of this multi-state manhunt involving 3 agencies at least, if not more. He also, according to police, was not expecting to be found. He didn't seem to act that way. They were thankful that the situation did not become violent. So when the officers approached, he talked to them, he lowered his mask. When they asked him, have you been in New York recently? He started shaking, is what police are saying. What they found, a ghost gun, which, according to police, matches the one seen in the video of the shooting, including a silencer that was found. This ghost gun, meaning that the gun was, according to authorities, produced, they believe, in a 3D printer. So it's not something that he would have had to buy, but something that he could have created. There was also ammunition, which matches the shell casings that were found in the crime scene. You might remember the ones that were etched or written with Sharpie with the words "deny, defend, depose." They also found a 3-page document, which authorities say has information that is relevant to the motive that they're investigating, and that fake ID that matches, as I mentioned, the one that was used in the hostel, along with clothing and masks. We are hearing what I'm seeing on social media. People who seem to be expressing support. And I'll tell you this, Vlad, I heard today from Altoona police that they are receiving death threats against the officers who made this arrest and against the agency, as well as other kinds of threats and messages of support for the shooter, not the victim. If you've been on social media, you've seen those kinds of messages too.
All right, Lilia reporting from Altoona, Pennsylvania. Lilia, thank you very much as always. We'll check in with you a bit later. Appreciate it. Okay, it's been just a few days since the fall of the Assad regime in Syria, but already refugees are lining up for the chance to return home. CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tayyib has more.
Well, I'm here at the Turkish-Syrian border. Just beyond that crossing over there is Syria, a Syria not led by Bashar al-Assad. And you can see here, these are Syrian refugees who have been living in Turkey. There's around 3 million living in Turkey. And you can see they have suitcases, they have bags. They're going back to Syria, back to a country which has been shattered in 14 years, nearly 14 years of civil war, going back to an uncertain future. But for the many men here, it is worth it. They are ready to go back. They are ready to rebuild their country. Again, a country that has been shattered by war. In fact, according to UN figures, 96% of Syrians today live on less than $7 a day. There is so much uncertainty with this power vacuum left by Bashar al-Assad. What is this country going to be like? But for these Syrian refugees who for so long have been away from their homes, it is a risk they're willing to take to go back to a country which is no longer led by a dictator. Back to you.
All right, MTS, thank you very much. And this morning, there's renewed hope that the collapse of the regime in Syria will lead to American journalist Austin Tice coming home. President Biden says he believes Tice is alive, but there is no direct evidence. Tice disappeared 12 years ago while reporting on the Syrian civil war. His parents spoke with CBS Mornings earlier today, and they remain confident their son is alive.
There has been confirmation from folks that have had eyes on him, and that even fairly recently. So again, we're confident that he's alive, and we know he's ready to come home.
We have intel about Austin being alive. He's treated well, and he was in a safe place before all this started, so we're not sure where he is now, but we're sure we're going to find him.
Meanwhile, the Washington Post reports U.S. Special Envoy for Hostage Affair Roger Carstens has traveled to Beirut to coordinate efforts to find Tice. Okay, President-elect Trump announces new administration picks as some of his more controversial cabinet choices head back to Capitol Hill to make their case to lawmakers. We'll have that next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Some of President-elect Trump's cabinet picks are expected back on Capitol Hill this morning. They're looking to garner more Senate support ahead of their confirmation hearings. That includes Trump's pick for FBI Director Kash Patel. Pete Hegseth and Kristi Noem are also looking to secure more votes this week before Congress goes dark for the winter break. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe is in West Palm Beach, Florida. He's tracking all the developments for us this morning. So, Ed, let me begin with Kash Patel, who's really been making the rounds, much like another controversial pick, Pete Hegseth. It seems as if most of his selections, the president-elects, are staying the course, ignoring their critics, ignoring sort of the controversy, and that seems to be working.
It does, because while critics may critic, they've only got to worry about 53 votes in the Senate, those 53 Republican senators who can vote yay or nay. And as long as he's got a majority of the Senate, or she, those nominees should be fine. And so that's why you see them making these methodical visits to key members of the committees first that would consider their nomination, and then eventually perhaps the full Senate. And we should point out that in most of these cases already, they've extended invitations to meet with Democratic senators who, at least so far, have passed up the opportunity, although we'll continue to track that. Kash Patel, the latest to join the fray, Tulsi Gabbard as well. Patel meeting yesterday, for example, with a senior member of the Judiciary Committee, John Cornyn of Texas, who came out and said, you know, you've heard all this stuff about how he wants to blow up the FBI or fire them all. He said, I think you would hear from Patel more directly now that that's just conjecture, and you should ask him about that. Well, it's that conjecture, of course, that earns them the attention of the president-elect and gets them the job in the first place. So be curious to see if they ever get the job. Do they make good on any of those promises or those statements that they were making during the campaign season? But either way, so far at least, Patel and Gabbard making those rounds and haven't found any signs of opposition just yet.
And so, Ed, Tulsi Gabbard, the president-elect's pick for Director of National Intelligence, is also expected back on the Hill. But given where we are with Syria in the news cycle over the last couple of days, and some of the criticism that she's picked up from people in sort of, this is not just the media, these are people like the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton with regards to some of the criticisms that they made about Tulsi Gabbard, including expressing support for Bashar al-Assad. Could that derail her nomination?
With all due respect to the former Secretary of State, I don't think Hillary Clinton's opinion of her is going to carry much weight with Republican senators. I mean, here again, she's got to convince at least 51 of those senators to vote yes. We should point out, yesterday, after some of her meetings, she came out and stressed that she agrees with the president-elect that there should be no U.S. engagement or involvement in what is going on in Syria now. To say that unprompted is designed to assuage more public concerns about her previous visits to Syria, most notably in 2017 when she met with then Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad, who's now in Russia. She had expressed sympathy or not been as critical of the Assad regime through the years, and that's part of what concerns at least some senators. And remember, you're not necessarily seeing anybody say no, but you're not seeing anybody necessarily say yes either. Senators know 6 weeks, and that's about how much longer this transition is a long time. Something could get revealed, something could get said that would force that senator who had said yes to then backtrack. And so they all leave their options open. But the fact that she's getting meetings, the fact that nobody's out there proactively raising concerns about her is a sign that, at least for now, she's doing all right and should ultimately find favor. If something is revealed in the coming weeks, however, things could change, and we'll see.
Yeah, indeed. Ed O'Keefe, always great to have you, my friend. Stay nice and toasty warm out there. Appreciate it.
Part of the job. Take care.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you, my friend. All right, these are pictures coming out of Malibu, California. This massive inferno, now being called the Franklin Fire, was only discovered about an hour before midnight. Some 6,000 people were placed under evacuation orders. CBS News Los Angeles reporter Linda Patel spoke with one survivor who made it out with her life, but not much else.
About 2 horses that I left in there. I know the house is gone. I went back in there and to try to find the horses, but it was too dangerous. We had to just get out of there as quickly as we could and follow the sheriffs out. And I was able to save one horse. I got the family out of the house, and this is where I'm at. I was trying to get to Point Doom right now, and the road is closed because the fire from Pepperdine crossed over to the beach. And right now I just heard that the pier over here got fired too, so we're kind of sitting in the middle.
And Linda, it wasn't your house, but you said your boss's house.
My boss, correct.
And I'm guessing, I can't imagine what it was like to see that and to really not be able to do anything.
Well, at that point, the family was out. I tried to go back in there to get the other two horses that spooked and ran back towards the property. And I did see the barn. The barn's gone, and I could see the structures on the hill of the home that they're gone.
And talk to me about the alerts, because I think we knew that it was going to be windy, but when you went to bed, was everything okay? Did you know this was going to spark up in the middle of the night?
Everything was okay. I thought everything was fine. I just came back with the Christmas tree at 10 o'clock from Agora. I took Canaan over, all of Canaan and Point Doom over there. All the power is out. None of the signals worked or anything, but then once you got closer this way, like past Paradise Cove, everything's like normal and lit up, and I got back to the house and went to bed fine. And then midnight, I hear all these helicopters, and I thought it was from the Navy base or something, and it come out, and the whole mountain all around us, everything was engulfed. And I got everybody up and out of the house and tried to stay back and save the horses.
And even where we are, we can see this. It's a water plant that we're watching, and then you see when the power poles go up. Yeah. And that's the thing, is it's just happening so quickly, right?
Yes, it's happening so quickly. Like right here, this is Pepperdine. The fire just jumped over to the park. That's where we thought we were supposed to go, but everybody said no. They're saying to go to Santa Monica. Right here, we have two schools. We have Our Lady of Malibu. And we have a public school. I think the private school is gone for sure. Yeah, that's what it looks like.
I'm guessing you've lived here a while. Have you ever seen like these kinds of conditions?
When Wolseley hit, I was kind of here, but I was leaving, and I just remember the sand animals were so bad, but I didn't really get to be here for the fire because I got, everything was closed. You couldn't get through here. But this is like pretty much my first one.
Linda, I'm so glad that you're safe. I'm so sorry about the damage that you've already seen, and I know you're so worried about animals. I know there's a lot of people. We're going to try to get as much information about where it's safe for you, where it's safe for animals, but please take care of yourself.
Thank you.
All right, that fire is said to have jumped across the iconic Pacific Coast Highway and damaged Malibu's pier. Officials are expected to hold a press conference later today. Of course, we'll continue to have ongoing coverage throughout the morning. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu takes a stand this morning in his corruption trial. What's at stake and what you need to know about this very divisive case. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following this morning. The battle over the sale of Alex Jones's InfoWars continues in court today. Yesterday, a bankruptcy judge heard the testimony from The Onion defending their winning bid to purchase InfoWars last month. The satirical news outlet wants to turn the website into parodies. Jones claims the auction process was rigged with fraud and collusion. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is recovering this morning after emergency surgery to stop bleeding in his skull. Doctors say it was a result of a fall he suffered in October. The 79-year-old is recovering in an intensive care unit in Sao Paulo, and doctors say he is doing well. Tens of thousands of people were evacuated in the central Philippines after one of the nation's 24 active volcanoes erupted for the second time this year. Officials say ash spewed 2.5 miles into the air on Monday. Luckily, no injuries or casualties have been reported. And now returning to our top story, the man suspected of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson is facing murder and weapons charges. Officers arrested 26-year-old Luigi Mangione at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania yesterday when employees recognized him and called 911. CBS News Philadelphia reporter Josh Sidorowitz is live from Huntington, Pennsylvania, near the state prison where the suspect is being held. Josh, that's not far, obviously, from Altoona. What I find remarkable, and I think what a lot of people find remarkable, is despite all the facial recognition technology and the search for DNA evidence and the weapons and tracking his movements, it's just an ordinary person who took notice of an ordinary wanted poster or sign and called it into authorities.
And that's it. And the governor, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, last night reiterating that that's, the real hero here in all of this, that eagle-eyed customer who alerted the employee at the McDonald's and kind of got the ball rolling. It's really, Vlad, when you think about it, we're such a world away here, right, from where this all allegedly started for Luigi Mangione, figuratively and literally, right? There's some 300 miles that separate Altoona, Pennsylvania, and that McDonald's from Midtown Manhattan, where United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was killed. And so Now you've got investigators who are trying to retrace his steps, who are trying to figure out how he did evade authorities for so long, how he got from there to here, where he was at for these past several days. And the governor even saying last night, Governor Shapiro saying they believe that he got as far as Pittsburgh, and that's about another 100 miles west from where we are at right now. I tell you what police say they do know at this time is that when they did pick him up at that McDonald's, he was carrying multiple electronic devices, which they believe he was using to evade detection. He was working to avoid cameras on his way. They believe that he left New York City immediately after that shooting, hopped a Greyhound to Philly. Not clear how much time he actually spent in Philadelphia before then making his way west here to Pennsylvania. But, even now in custody, they're still asking for more information. We are here outside of the state facility, just in the next county over from Altoona, where he is being held. And the big question now, Vlad, with those charges filed by New York prosecutors for murder, is just how long before he is extradited back to Manhattan.
All right, Josh, thank you very much for your reporting. Appreciate it. Okay, we're following breaking news out of Southern California right this very moment. A dangerous brush fire known as the Franklin Fire has scorched at least 2,200 acres and continues to grow. CBS News Los Angeles is speaking with a student from Pepperdine University, where students there were forced to shelter in place last night. Let's dip in.
Window.
Yeah, so the window facing out towards the water, the fire was starting to come up pretty close to it, and so some of the RAs and people volunteering and working, they were having us stand away from the window for a while because it was starting to heat up. So I didn't get to experience it personally, but they were kind of blocking off the area for a little bit.
So what is your plan now? Are you still sheltering in place? You said you're between the library and where? The cafeteria? So are you indoors or are you outdoors somewhere?
Oh, I'm indoors. I'm in the library right now. I was talking about the student body, about the two places where they're housing us.
Okay, so describe the scene. We're looking at some pictures right now. I think this is from the Graphic. This is from Elizabeth Smith, who runs the Graphic. She's an advisor in the journalism program. She posted this picture, so we're seeing the vantage point of the students in the library with the flames coming so close to the building. Tell us about the scene right now. There are hundreds of you packed in the library during finals week. A lot of people, it looks like, in pajamas who might have been sleeping.
Yeah, so looking around, almost everybody is asleep somewhere on the floor. Only a couple people are walking around just somehow up and ready to go.
Okay, so everyone's sleeping there. And do you have any kind of information about when you might go back to the dorms? Are people making plans to just go home since it is finals week right now and just try to get back to their families? Or where do you go from here as the student body?
Okay, so the shelter in place hasn't really... the shelter in place has been lifted, but they're advising us to stay here. Some people have chosen to go back. They're not forcing people to stay, but they've advised that we stay here in the library, which is what I'm choosing to do because I don't want to deal with the smoke inhalation. Honestly, if there's any place to study, it's the library. The first few hours of being here was so loud, but now it's pretty quiet.
Can you, we know that Pepperdine has some fire services in place there. You've got the little lake where the firefighters can get water and use that. Do you feel pretty safe at the school?
Honestly, I do. I think they were very organized in getting everybody to the library. They're good with communication. I'm close friends with RAs of both my dorm and other dorms, so it was nice getting a lot of that information. We got alerts through our phones, both phone calls and texts, plus a bunch of people working with fire vests, walking around the library, answering questions.
All right, you're following along with our CBS News Los Angeles colleagues as they continue their coverage of those wildfires out in Malibu. We'll continue to dip in as news warrants. Meanwhile, let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the first look at the national forecast. Hey, Grant.
Hey, Vlad, it's a scary couple of days out there in Southern California where these winds have really started to increase quickly. Those Santa Ana winds just blowing in out of the mountains. 12.8 million people today underneath red flag warnings due to this increased threat for fire danger. Wind speeds today could be sustained from 30 to 40 miles per hour, gusting up to, in some cases, nearly 80 miles per hour. Now, look, the humidity is incredibly low. I was just checking some conditions around Southern California. Some of those relative humidity values are currently in the single digits. In fact, I found one report of relative humidity values down to 1%. It's incredibly dry air, incredibly windy air, and that combination is what's producing this not just critical fire danger today, but that extreme fire danger today. I mean, it is really, really windy in places that are really dry, but it's going to be a concern pretty much all day long. High wind warning up for some places near L.A. You've got wind gusts there in Camarillo around 46 miles per hour. It gets even windier later on this afternoon. It's feast or famine across the country because over in the East Coast, we've got a significant chance for not just rain, but flooding rains, showers and storms across the southern Gulf states. And then as we go into the day tomorrow, that storm system really cranks up. We got rain across most of the mid-Atlantic and Northeast, with now another blast of Arctic air bringing snow to the Great Lakes. Vlad, back to you.
All right, Grant, thank you very much. In the aftermath of the Assad regime collapsing in Syria this weekend, thousands of people have flocked to the notorious Sedani prison just outside of Damascus in search of signs of their loved ones who disappeared under the dictatorship. Our Elizabeth Palmer has more.
This is the notorious Sednaya prison. It's a name that struck fear into the heart of every Syrian. Criminals were incarcerated here, and so were political prisoners, and many of them simply disappeared. One of the first things the HTS rebels did when they took Damascus was to blow the doors off and let the prisoners out. And as far as we know, the prison is empty, but that hasn't stopped thousands of people, families coming to try and find evidence of what happened to their loved ones lost years ago. The saddest thing is that the evidence is probably all over the ground, or at least some of it. Prison archives, records, booking sheets, but it's being trashed, and it's very likely that most of that information, which would be so valuable to so many people, is going to be lost. Back to you.
All right, turning to Israel now, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has taken to the witness stand this morning in his long-running trial for alleged corruption. It is the first time a sitting Israeli prime minister has been seated on the stand as a criminal defendant. Joining us now for more on this is CBS News foreign correspondent Deborah Pata. Thanks so much for joining us, Deborah. So describe what happened in court today.
Well, as you mentioned, it is indeed a very pivotal moment. Finally, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, has taken the stand. In a nutshell, Netanyahu is accused of corruption and bribery, but he denied any wrongdoing. Although it's definitely a low point in his decades-long political career, his critics say he's obsessed with his image, and this will stand in stark contrast to his desperation, really, to be seen as a respected international statesman. In fact, much of the case actually revolves around the media and allegations of offering political favors in exchange for positive coverage. So Netanyahu spent much of the day delivering a lecture on the relationship between the media and politicians and how he believes it should play out. He even went so far as to cite naming examples of Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, saying that they had an entire history of starting their own media outlets and that this is very common in the U.S. That was pretty much most of what he said on the stand today. Vlad?
This all comes, obviously, Deborah, as you know, you've been covering this since the beginning, this turbulent time in the Middle East. Are there any concerns that this trial will be a distraction for the prime minister? Because there are some very serious threats in the region.
There are indeed. I mean, he's battling with a war in Gaza. There's this fragile ceasefire in Lebanon, and now this dramatic change for the entire region with the collapse of the Assad regime. So, yes, he certainly has a lot on his plate. But remember, he has delayed testifying for years on end. The trial started in 2020, and he kept on coming up with reasons why he could not appear. The judge was fed up and said today is the day. And certainly that is what Netanyahu wanted the judge to believe, that this would be too much of a distraction, given his repeated attempts to delay this trial. His critics really have sought to link his corruption trial, in fact, to the war in Gaza, Vlad, saying the allegations led the prime minister to attempt a contentious judicial overhaul last year. That was before the law, you'll remember that. Massive protests in Israel. And that really divided this country and created an image of weakness, his critics say, which encouraged the October 7 Hamas attack. And he's also been accused by protesters now of dragging out that war in a bid to stay in power and avoid his corruption case. Remember, it's not only his only legal challenge. He also faces a warrant of arrest for war crimes issued by the International Criminal Court. And obviously, he wants to try and stay out of jail. Fraud and breach of trust are punishable by up to 3 years in jail and other charges up to 10 years. Vlad?
All right. Deborah Patta for us reporting live from Israel this evening. Thank you, Deborah. Appreciate it. Okay, folks, right now a Senate committee is holding a critical hearing about the potential impact of those mass deportations proposed by President-elect Trump. We're going to be there live on the Hill next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. The Senate Judiciary Committee is holding a hearing on how mass deportations might split up families and hurt the U.S. economy. The plan proposed by President-elect Donald Trump could impact immigrant workers who, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, make up more than 18% of the U.S. workforce. I want to bring in CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian to talk more about this. So, Nicole, there are a couple of hearings on the Hill today that will address immigration. What's your sense about what lawmakers are saying about this potential deportation plan?
Well, obviously, it depends which side of the aisle you're talking to. In this hearing that's taking place by the Senate Judiciary Committee, of course, Democrats still in the majority here in the Senate is really taking a more critical look in terms of what it believes could be the harms of this potential mass deportation plan. So senators on the Judiciary Committee are, for instance, hearing from immigration experts as well as former military officials, because the President-elect has suggested that he may not only invoke some type of national emergency, but that he may use the military to try to carry out this mass deportation plan. Republicans, on the other hand, obviously more supportive of the president's objectives, although still lots of questions in terms of the logistics and the amount of money that Congress will ultimately have to approve to try to put this into action. So that's more the conversation on the Republican side. They have already talked about using a process known as budget reconciliation to try to expedite any type of funding that could potentially go towards border security. That's something that Senate leaders have made clear they want to act on kind of as soon as they take over the majority. So again, kind of depends which side of the aisle you're talking to.
Also, the focus on the Hill lately has been the Trump transition. What's the latest that you're hearing about Trump's support for folks, for example, like Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth as a nominee?
Yeah, well, I just caught up with Pete Hegseth a short time ago. He is once again here on Capitol Hill for meetings, and probably most critical are some of the meetings he is going to have with female senators. He met with Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa for a second time yesterday. I described that as an amazing meeting. Senator Ernst, for her part, put out a statement saying that she intends to support Pete through the process, but I asked Hegseth more specifically if she committed her vote. Take a listen.
I would never speak for Senator Ernst, but I appreciate the time. It was an amazing conversation. She's a wonderful combat vet, and welcomed all of her insight.
So again, he didn't go so far as to say that Joni Ernst expressed in that meeting that she would vote for Pete Hegseth, nor did Ernst's statement go that far. But that is the signal that we are looking out for, since she is such a critical vote. And we know, for instance, Pete Hegseth will also be meeting with senators, more moderate senators, for instance, like Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Susan Collins of Maine, again, all of whom have expressed some concerns about some of the allegations surrounding Pete Hegseth, but have remained non-committal. So again, will be interesting to see how they feel about these meetings, and Pete Hegseth for that matter, once they take part.
All right, Nicole, appreciate you as always. Thank you. Okay, we're expecting an update shortly on that massive California wildfire that scorched more than 2,200 acres so far. We'll bring you the very latest from officials. You're streaming CBS News 24/7.
tried to kill me, though. They said I was paralyzed. Said I couldn't walk, but look at me now.
Look at him now. Jamie Foxx's new Netflix stand-up special, Jamie Foxx, What Had Happened Was, dropped overnight. In it, the Oscar winner reveals last year's mystery illness that kept him out of the public eye for months. It turns out Foxx was one of nearly 800,000 people to suffer a stroke last year. Even though the actor can find the humor in just about anything, he described what had happened to him as a very scary situation. We're all glad that he's doing much, much better. We're going to continue to follow fires out of Southern California. 2,200 acres have already been torched. Our partners at CBS News Los Angeles have been going nonstop, covering the very latest developments, and they're on the ground right now in Malibu. Let's dip in.
We are on Sweetwater Mesa, and this is one of the first examples of damage that we are seeing. Take a look behind me. Firefighters say when they got here, this entire garage was engulfed in flames, and the fire was starting to move through the attic to the main part of the home. But they say they were able to save the main part of the home. Unfortunately, there is a lot of damage, but they say considering what they were going up against in the early morning hours when this fire was spreading, this homeowner is very lucky. There are a couple other homes along this street where it looks like there's some minimal damage, but considering how fast these flames were moving and how gusty those winds are, the firefighters say the homeowners in this area are very lucky. Now, this area is just across from where the Malibu Pier is. So if you know that area of Malibu, this is the area that we're in. There are a lot of canyons here where that fire was going through, burned a lot of vegetation. But again, in the early morning hours, we're seeing right now minimal damage to homes. There are still firefighters up and down this neighborhood watching on hot spots, still putting out some of those and trying to protect properties. So they're certainly not out of the water yet, out of the woods yet, but they say that right now there are no winds that they really have to worry about. So they're doing what they can to protect properties, to get a handle of this fire as they can, because they know that the situation could change as the day goes on. That's the latest in Malibu right now. We'll send it back to you.
Okay, Tina, thank you. And this is the time that people dread, is going back and seeing their damaged or burned property. Mark, we want to check in with you now. You've obviously been watching all of this, keeping an eye on all the departments involved and the different agencies now on scene.
Yeah, that's right. Multiple fire agencies, LA County Fire, LA City Fire sending some resources, Ventura County sending a lot of resources, Orange County. But most importantly, the first British Aero Tanker 146 from Foxx Field is now on station. Just a few seconds ago, we saw that aircraft drop over 3,000 gallons of fire retardant on a north-south direction. They're fighting the eastern flank of the fire near Carbon Canyon. What Sky Cal is showing us right here, this is one of these small properties in Carbon Canyon. Looks like there may be some sort of a container there that was on fire, but this eastern flank here, oh, this is actually Carbon Mesa Road. This is that very large property that's up there on Carbon Beach Terrace, excuse me, and they were focusing a lot of structure protection right in this area and the neighborhood right to the right of it, which is Carbon Mesa Road. Now, this is the eastern flank of the fire. It's burning into Carbon Canyon. They are concerned this is...
All right, you've been following along to our sister network, CBS News Los Angeles, as they continue to cover those fires out west. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the final look at the national forecast. Hey, Grant.
Hey, Vlad, look, a significant number of people across Southern California underneath that threat for fire danger, or what the National Weather Service issues as a red flag warning. 12.8 million people under some sort of at least caution for the threat for more fires to start. Windy conditions and dry conditions today, 30 to 40 mile per hour sustained wind with gusts potentially as high as 80 miles per hour. That wind begins to increase throughout the rest of the day. There's already smoke flying around from those fires, so you get those gusty conditions, the smoke in the area. You could have reduced visibility. So if you're across Southern California today, just be very, very careful as you go throughout the entire day. The worst of those fire concerns today are just north of Los Angeles, really from Calabasas to Santa Clarita, where you've got an extreme fire outlook today because of those incredibly gusty conditions and very dry fuels. Meanwhile, you've got northern tier states ushering in much colder air as rain moves into the eastern half of the U.S.
All right, Grant, thank you very much. That does it for me, folks, but stay right where you are. After the break, Elizabeth Cook is live from San Francisco with all the news breaking from coast to coast. This is CBS News 24/7.